excited to get things up and running. We got big books. In fact, it was very hard to narrow the layout this week, so we're not going to get to cover everything, but hopefully we're covering the big things you want to hear about. This is where we do all things comics all the time, and with me is an amazing team, as well as I love that we get so many debuts here. This is great. So with me, Ride or Die, Kofi Outlaw, and welcoming to the pool list for the very first time, Spencer Perry. How are you guys?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm always here, but always happy to be here.
Ah, see, that's so nice. The warm and fuzzies. I'm so happy about it. This is a big week because if you've been following the main show, we have been talking about the relaunch of the Ultimate Universe for quite a bit, and we're finally at the first real kind of move into that. We had the 4-issue miniseries, and then we've kind of had some previews and things, but this is really kind of our first the first salvo of the Ultimate Universe with Ultimate Spider-Man #1, the much anticipated book. And I gotta say, for me, we're gonna get into it here because we kind of had mixed emotions about the real launch of the new Ultimate Universe, and there were a lot of questions and it was a little murky here and there, and there were some really great parts, but then there were also some parts where is this gonna land? And then the premise for Ultimate Spider-Man hit, and I think it was kind of universally this sounds great. We're on board, and hoping that it would deliver. At one point in time, I remember saying I didn't know if we needed another Ultimate Universe. Ultimate Spider-Man from Bendis is one of my all-time favorite runs. It will always be. And I thought it was just like a moment in time, and then now do we need that? Can we just look at the core universe and things? And then I read this issue. I could not have been more wrong. But I could not be happier that I am more wrong, because my God, this is everything you want in an opener. This is just everything you want. And, we've been complaining over the past year or two, me and Kofi, about kind of being very mixed on the Spider-Man books and wanting a Spider-Man of our own, in a way of age and demographic and that kind of thing. We all have families. And so having this, and the way it's depicted, for me, I could not think of a bigger home run swing. I was just so happy of how all the things came together here. Spencer, you reviewed the book for us, and you can check out his full review on Comicbook.com later today. What did you come away with this? Was it as much of a home run for you as it was for me? How you feeling?
Oh, yes, it absolutely was. And I think the thing that really sets this book apart from the original Ultimate Spider-Man, or even any other alternate Earth variant that we see pop up in Marvel Comics, is that the changes that they make to characters, to pieces of the lore that we're all familiar with, they don't feel arbitrary. They're all rooted in the narrative that Hickman has been planting and is going to sow throughout this series. Characters that are alive, characters that are dead, characters that don't know each other. It's there's a lot of great implications about, well, if he hasn't been Spider-Man for 20 years, then these things never happened, so these people are alive, or these things never happened, so these people may not be around. And it's I think it's a real testament not only to Hickman's writing, but to Marco Cicchetto's artwork, that a book that has one action scene and is only one page of a 40-page book is gripping and visually interesting the entire time. It's a delight to read, because nothing feels like it was a change for the sake of doing a change. It's all a change for the sake of pushing the narrative and trying new things.
Yeah, Kofi, how you feeling?
We are big on talking first issues here, and how first issues, what the duty of a first issue is, and what the results of a first issue can be. And I think that this one did what we want from a first issue, as Spencer pointed out, without using the crutch of overly comic booky things or too much action. It was just, it also masterfully takes lore that we already know and spins it, no pun intended, in a way that really instantly intrigues. From what I'm hearing so far, overwhelmingly, nearly every Spider-Man fan that I've heard from so far. It's still early. We're recording this early. So, but like we've been saying, like just changing these character dynamics, who's alive, who's not alive, what in just the thoughts of where they end up and the premise you're presented with and how much you're like, okay, I could see that. Like I could see this character ending up here or these characters having this relationship and doing this. And it creates a whole new pocket of like what you want to see in Spider-Man within a lore that's already kind of convoluted, but uses that lore in a good way and sets us up for something already so deeply intriguing across a lot of character levels, and getting that character world back intact for Spider-Man in a compelling way is what I think we've been missing for a long time. Because in the old books, in the 60s, the 70s, up to like the 80s, Spider-Man's world was very much a part of the story. That was what makes and still makes me point to like the original Green Goblin story as one of the greatest, was this mystery of almost like a whodunit of the people of Spider-Man and Peter Parker not being able to trust the people in his world because of who was possibly putting on that mask and doing crazy things. But the world mattered, and this already makes the world of Spider-Man matter.
Yeah.
That's
if I can add. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kofi.
No, go ahead.
If I can add on to that, part of the crux of my review of the book is that we're talking a lot about lore and the way that it's building on lore and subverting our expectations. But the thing that I think really makes this book work, and that readers should take to heart, is that it is accessible. You don't have to have read Ultimate Invasion. You don't have to have read Ultimate Universe #1 to read this book. It tells you what you need to know that happened in those that are important elements, but accessibility especially. Like, even if you just know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and you don't know anything else about Spider-Man lore, you can read this and enjoy it. And I think when Marvel lets Spider-Man be accessible, that's when Marvel comics are at their best. And the problem with main book Spider-Man is that it hasn't been super accessible for quite a while.
Oh, for such a long time.
That's a segue, Spencer. We're here today because that was what I was about to segue into, and you kind of gave me a perfect, even better setup there. The one thing I came away from this book asking myself was, would it have been better if I didn't have had to go through all that Ultimate Invasion stuff? If it was kind of a mystery about here's the premise about what happened, this thing that meant so much, and that I got bits and pieces of that along the way, because I felt like I was like, this made more use out of the events of that book within just like a couple of just sequences and scenes that had no other superheroes, none of those characters, and like nothing to do. And even the stuff at the end, the kind of climactic part of this book, like I was like, if that wasn't out there already, I would have really been okay, and even possibly more intrigued than having had gone through that whole thing. So that's funny.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think that would have been an amazing. Maybe not so much for Universe because it was so focused on like those 3 key people and building that. Like I'd still like to have that, but having that 4-issue miniseries be just spread out throughout the individual books. We have Black Panther coming up. We have more, right? So just making that part of the ongoing mystery of figuring out how the heck this world was created, I think that would have been more effective, because I think, my kind of echoing what I said before of like, do we need this right now? Like, do we need to go back to that well and just change things up again? Was kind of reinforced by that miniseries. It was like, I don't know, this isn't enough to sway me. Like, I feel like we're, treading some of the same ground. We're just changing some things here and there. And then you get a book that is obviously catered to an entire character, so it's a little bit different. But, this really, just what Spencer was saying, this feels like they wanted to make something that is unapologetically Spider-Man. It's all the best aspects of the character that we've loved over the years. And when I say we, I mean we. The people who have wanted to see married Spider-Man and Peter and MJ just freaking happy. It's just like a normal couple going through things. They got bills. They're raising kids, but like they are still completely intrinsically them. And the way they interact, oh my God, it was just like this wave of nostalgia hit, but not in the thing of like we're going back to tired things we've already done. Like it felt new and fresh, but it felt like this is the Spider-Man I've been wanting for years. This is
Yeah.
like I just, man, you know, and it just speaks to that. I'm so excited. I could not have been. I think we do. If every book can be this, if every character can have their own version of what this book encompasses for Spider-Man, yeah, we need an Ultimate Universe. I'll be 100% bite on that. Like I was wrong. I'm very happy to be wrong.
What it does is what we kind of said in the beginning. Like, I was a 90s kid kind of comic reader. And so for me, like this book, weirdly, it gets really personal. Like, this is a portrait of what it is to be middle-aged now. Like, and like, I mean, this is exactly where I'm at. Like, I have 2 kids. I have a wife that I've been with for a very long time. I have aging elders that, you know, are professionals and have good stature that are also aging and I got to worry about. And like all of these questions about life and where I'm at and what I could have done and what I have done, like all of this stuff is very real to like a middle-aged person right now. So this is the Spider-Man, like, hey, I grew up reading Spider-Man and yes, the kids love Spider-Man. That's easy. But like, what about me as a fan who's grown up with this character? Yeah, boom, we're here now. Like, this is it. I'm already in. Like, middle-aged me is now coming to Spider-Man books for how do I swing out of this one? But that conversation with him and Mary Jane is just so real, like of a married couple conversation, and just, you know, even where it just leaves things. I think the quote was just like, she says, like, you know, is this going to change things between you and me? And she's like ready for that answer. The artwork is just so perfect. Like her face is just like, she's ready for to maybe hear that crazy answer. And he's like, oh, you know, like, absolutely not. And she's like, all right, well, and then you get a good use of what could have been the corniest line of a book, you know, turns out to be like one of the most effective, you know.
Right, exactly. Well, and I love how they play on that too, because like Spencer said, like it's all the hallmarks that you know, but twisted in a different way. I know this book just came out, so obviously we don't want to get like super into spoilers, but I feel like there's one part of this that I don't want to say because it is a kind of a bigger thing. But, you know, knowing J. Jonah's in it, I don't think is a big spoiler. And the way he's introduced by yelling Parker, and the way they twist that it was done so well. It just like brought a smile into my face. And that's indicative of the entire issue. There's so many little things that they play on. And man, it's been so long since I've rooted for Peter. Well, I can't just say that. Like, it's been so long since when half the book isn't just apologizing for how much of a jerk Peter's become. And this book is like, I was rooting for him. I was in. Like, you go find yourself, dang it. Like, you go do that, man. You go on with this bad stuff. I was so happy for Peter. If they can do the same thing for Beasts at some point, I'll be like over the moon. So yeah, I think that's, I think it brings us full course here, around on this book. I think this was no pun intended, a marvelous success, and one I hope is indicative of what the line hopes to be. And this is, man, it's been a minute since I've been and Gang War, by the way, I've been raving about Gang War. Gang War has been really fun. I've really enjoyed that. But it's kind of like a win-win across the board. Before we move on to the next book, any last minute notes you guys want to add on?
Just that, mine's real quick. Just that this already creates so much intrigue about just going through the dynamics of Spider-Man again. Like, what does Peter think the experience of Spider-Man is like this? Does he wisecrack like this? Is he a bit more serious because there's more stakes for him in this when it's getting hurt, missing things? Like, I'm already so in. So good job,
Spencer.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because they've talked about it before the book even came out, and he's on the cover for the next one. But like, who do you think Green Goblin is? I don't think it's as obvious as we want to think it would be.
Yeah, because my first thought is like, oh, okay, well, it's got to be, you know, Harry. But like, I was like, no, like, you know, I don't know. Nothing about this book has been that so far. So, you know,
yeah, I'm not convinced that it's someone. It might be Jameson.
I think it's one of the 2 old central figures.
I agree. I think it's one of them because the Goblin appears right after a pivotal moment at the Bugle. So it has to be one of them, right?
Yeah, which would be, by the way, a fantastic twist. That would be right off the bat.
Oh man, I kind of hope we don't have to do this because, like, yeah, you got to origin at some point, baby. So got to origin at some point. So yeah, that'd be a twist.
I'm excited. So let's move into the another big Marvel book this week, which, boy, this takes me back to when the show first started because, man, Rise of the Powers of X, or 10, if you're like, I don't know how to refer to this one in particular, but this is we talked about the, Fall of the House of X, #1 last week, and we actually came away with rave reviews. In fact, Janelle was like over the moon about an X-Men book, which is, my God. And then I read this one and I went, boy, I'm glad we didn't have Janelle read this one, because this is like the antithesis of that book. This is so many heady concepts. If you weren't reading that original series, I feel like you would be absolutely lost. We got calendars of timelines again. Like, this took me back. This was a Wayback Machine type thing. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying it was a stark jump for me. And it also mirrors what the original 2 series were. They were very different from each other. And then over time, they kind of merged and wove together. So, I mean, this one, I don't know. I think I actually need a second read on this before I even really feel like I have like a full opinion for him. But I will say, like, I was riveted. I wanted to see what happened next. I'm a little confused, a little all over the place with it. I don't know how I feel about it yet. It's kind of how I feel. Kofi, what do you think about this?
I think that, one of the things that I've been keeping my eye on, because as you said, we got into this doing House of X and Powers of 10 as one of the kind of launches of this show. And we were on it week to week, and we were deep down the rabbit hole. Yeah. So I've had my eye on this, and I've been writing about this since it's been going on, and to see kind of where they take this. But shout out to Kieran Gillen and RB, I almost said RB Silva, for kind of, they've been tasked with really landing the biggest part of this plane, which was all this timeline stuff that was set up. The main intrigue of House and Powers of the Moira lifetimes, what she learned, the twist by the end, and the 6th lifetime, and the distant future with like the Dominion and like the machines and all this stuff about the machine man mutant war. Like, all of that has always been in the background of what's happening. It was the overall stakes of the X-Men, which I've loved. That basically the X-Men's real war isn't like just fighting against an Earth that hates and fears them. No, they're fighting time and like consequence, like what ends up surviving. That's been the most interesting part of this. So I like the heady stuff. I liked that the time travel mysteries and stuff and timeline mysteries of Powers. And this is the answer. The other book is clearly the answer to House, which is more personable, more character focused. And this one's more of the timeline, timey-wimey Doctor Who of it all. And so I thought, for new people taking on that from what Hickman had started, this was a pretty good kind of answer. And it does call back to all that stuff that's been building. And it gets tricky if you haven't been following, certainly. I mean, if you haven't been reading Immortal X-Men, if you didn't get through all of Sins of Sinister and all that, and you haven't been keeping your eye on the Sinister of it all, this is all really confusing. If you have been keeping your eye on all of that, this is good chess that you're seeing in this book. And so I have been, and I really enjoyed this because I've been so curious what they were going to do with this whole Dominion thing. The reveal of the original Nathaniel X, which we didn't really hit on much, but I kind of loved that twist. I was like, oh, snap.
Great.
That's classic with 90s X-Men kind of crazy twist stuff, right? Like, but landing that plane has been so crucial to this because it's all been interesting concept, but like, are we going to get into something that is going to actually feel like, okay, now we're into it and we got to do stuff. And for all the crazy stuff in here, I think the artwork helps a lot in this book to kind of convey what is happening here. But I think that I love the concepts. I love this kind of final X-Men team. We've seen a bunch of final X-Men teams over the years.
This team rules, by the way.
Very unique team,
And I knew you were going to love it. I still love, and there's just things there's things that when we have a social video up now, and I'm totally with you on this. I hope that some of this lasts beyond this book because it is so interesting. Like, I want Rasputin to always be around. Like,
Right.
I want certain things of this to be here. So yeah, it's a lot to take in, but this is the book that pays off people who have been kind of following this whole thing. And I think these are the people who are really paying it off as pretty much best you can salvage all of this scattered mess into one semi coherent thing. I think they did a pretty good job.
Spencer, what'd you think?
I was way into House of X and Powers of 10 when they came out, like I think most comic readers were, and I stuck with X-Men as long as Hickman was there, and then I sort of fell off after he left, and I've kept up with what was going on just by virtue of being a comic book reader and a fan.
Right.
So you always hear of like, all right, who's doing what now? There's clones of who doing this thing. So like, but that's suffice to say that I wasn't lost reading this book. It really felt like a sequel to House of X and Powers of 10 in a really satisfying way. And I think to your point, Kofi, didn't RB do the Powers of X artwork?
Yeah, he was working on one of those original books.
So like it just feels so kind of seamless almost. Like, it helps to have known these things that have happened between these two big series, but you could kind of go from Powers of 10 almost directly into this because they recap it as best they can, and then the charts help a little bit. But it's a lot of fun book. I'm with you, Kofi. I love when they do real heady, hard sci-fi with the X-Men, and I think Hickman did a great job of that when he was doing it. Gillen obviously does great work with that kind of stuff too, not only in his Marvel books, but all of his creator-owned stuff as well. But this is fun to read. It's got a great team, good character dynamics, and it's just wild. The kind, I like to say this a lot. It's the kind of comic book that makes you love the medium, because movies would never do this. This is so wild and out of the box that a movie can't do it, and studios are too afraid to do something this crazy. So like, this is where comic books thrive, is having like a fun, wild story like this.
Yeah. No, I it's funny that you bring up because I also agree. I think it is a direct sequel in that way. It feels very much born of the same cloth as those original books, and that's why I think we've received them so well. It is just very abrupt if you've been reading the other books for 6 months to a year, because they haven't had that. They've almost barely, other than Immortal, a lot of the other books, and even Immortal to a degree, because it's had its own storylines and things going on. This format has not been the format. And so it does feel a little like, even from reading the other books and things, it does feel like, oh, we're back in this again. And it takes a minute to kind of adjust. It took a minute for me to adjust my brain again to that, because House was always a little different. And so that kind of fits with everything else that's kind of come in the Krakoa era since. But it took a minute to kind of get back into the swing of that storytelling style. But I love it. Again, I feel like I need a second read to really kind of comprehend a lot of the moving from timeline to timeline. Some of them they do a good job of like giving you the digestible version, but like still, it's a lot. What I will say is Shadow Tiger needs to be a thing from here on out. That like, she needs to be around. What an awesome character. And yes, Captain Krakoa, everyone knows I'm very excited for Kamala to be in that mix, but Shadow Tiger was not on my radar, and I was very happy. So before we move to some quick fire books, let's do a quick round of Wreck or Pass. I imagine I don't know where the second book is going, but I feel like I know where the first book is going. So let's start with Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Spencer, you give it a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, it's a thumbs up all the way on Ultimate Spider-Man. And it's a book that I think builds enough goodwill already in this first issue that, like, even if the second one is a step down, we're going to keep it going. They've earned a lot of goodwill with one issue.
Kofi, what you say?
Easy thumbs up. Everybody who's been an adult reader who's looking for a Spider-Man story to jump into, here we are.
I am gonna give it a thumbs up as well. It's easy for all the reasons listed above. So I'm very excited for that. Next, let's move into Rise of the Powers of X. Kofi, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up if you've been following this era of X-Men. I mean, you can't miss this. So get on board the train.
Spencer, what you say?
Same thing, thumbs up. I love a hard sci-fi X-Men story, and I love it when comic books embrace things that only comics can do.
Same. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a thumbs up. While I am a little murky on some details, I still really enjoyed it. I was engrossed all the way through. I am excited to see what is in the, having that thing at the end and having that space and what they're doing and how proactive they're being. Again, I've just been like, man, I need a little hope with the mutants. So,
So I got to the chart and I was so engrossed with trying to figure out the charts. I stepped away from this and I forgot to read that epilogue until I just now read that epilogue, and I've been sitting here trying not to like flip out and be like, whoa, oh my God. Like now I'm so more into this book, double thumbs up, because I that epilogue and I was like, wait, what? And I was like, you're reading, and I was like, whoa.
Oh okay. My God. Amazing. Yeah.
Charts, man, you get lost.
Yeah, no, I get it. And also there was so much to take in on that chart. That chart is, as you flipping over and like it's awesome. So real quick, just to knock out two real quick ones. Green Lantern number 7 hit this week. I am a huge fan of what Jeremy Adams is doing on this book, but I gotta say, it is, the cover is very much like, hey, one of these people doesn't make it. They deliver on that. It's not a bait and switch, which is always nice, number one. But number two, they make that an emotional moment. And this is a flashback to the past and really gives you a better understanding of all of the circumstances that led to Hal being on Earth, and addresses the cliffhanger from last time and Sinestro. There's a lot in this issue, and I really like what they're doing. Also, the backup story by Tomasi is fantastic. And then Captain Marvel number 4. I've been kind of waiting for this book to hit its stride. And finally in issue 4, all that stuff starts to click. Yuna is a delightful character now that I feel like we've had a chance to get to know her, and she really kind of breaks out here in this issue. The swapping back and forth, having Doctor Strange and Clay involved is also a wonderful addition to any Captain Marvel book, frankly, ever since their whole kind of romance, off-kilter romance. But this is really fun. Feel like from here on out, I'm really excited to see where this book goes. All right, so we tried this last week in this kind of final segment, sharing a quick recommendation for you to take with you to the comic store either today or over the weekend or whenever you go next. We're each going to pick one book that we recommend, and we're going to try and keep it tight here so that we can share this all over the place. Really, it's frankly what we're doing. So I'm going to start with my recommendation for this week is Action Comics 1061. Big start of a bunch of creators taking over Superman, including Jason Aaron. That is me. Kofi, what you got?
I'm recommending Wolverine 41. It is the beginning of the Sabretooth War, which is touted as the most violent Wolverine story ever told. And so far, it is a pretty violent Wolverine versus Sabretooth story.
Sweet. Spencer, what you got? Round us out.
I'm going with James Bond 007 number 1. It's a brand new book, just started at Dynamite, fresh start. And best of all, Garth Ennis is writing it. So, it's Garth putting his hand both in the satirical leaning of things, but then doing classic James Bond with dry wit and, innuendo. So there you go.
Awesome. Those are your recommendations from us for the week. Let us know what you've been liking as well in the comments to this video. You can also shoot us tweets and Facebook messages, anything you want, letting us know what you're enjoying about the show. Until next week, catch you later. Pieces. Have a great week.